have, but he's for himself. Just like restaurants,
Sorry.
are higher because
Well,
that's
I'm sorry,
where
I'm just putting my
a
mouth.
lot of your costs to wastewater comes from is from stuff like that. So no, it's,
I don't know about this, I don't agree with that at all.
which one?
The parking thing,
Oh,
it's not gonna alleviate anything in the short term. All it's gonna be, is it's gonna be another burden on people.
okay.
Or whatever.
Am I early or? Oh, no.
No, you're right on the run.
Okay, so we'll call to order the planning commission meeting of Wednesday, November 2nd, 2022. Thought I was on the wrong day for a minute. Roll call.
Chair Cindy Olson,
Here.
Lisa Manifold.
Here.
Don Reimer.
Here.
Chuck Howard, Kent Slaymaker.
Here.
Ursula Kruzlegi.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, first thing is the approval of the minutes for September 22nd, 2022. We have a motion,
Make a motion to approve the minutes from September 22nd.
second.
Second it.
All in favor? Yay. Any opposed? No? Okay, oh, conflict of interest. That's new. Okay,
We've been adding that to all the agendas, based off of some of the training we've had, so, I highly doubt anybody has a conflict of interest when it comes to text amendments. But, it may come up in the future, when we actually talk about a development, project. So the city council does, discuss conflict of interest, so they just ask if anybody has one, on any item and that it be disclosed. But if someone does have a conflict, say a spouse or something like that is applying for, a development activity, then in the conflict of interest category, you'd say, I have a conflict and I'll, step out of the room during that item when it comes up. So that's kind of the role that plays.
and it's for the commission members.
Yes.
Okay, so the other thing that we've added, which we've had the last couple of times, is public comment period, which obviously we don't have anybody.
And we do not have anyone online either.
Okay, so the next item is there will be a public meeting, a public hearing tonight on the text amendment to chapter 21 of the Idaho Springs Municipal Code. And I will open the meeting at 6:04. So first thing is the applicant, which is the city.
All right, thank you very much. Before you this evening is a text amendment. We did have this on the last meeting agenda, so I might give you a little more time to take a look at it. The primary item that we were looking for in this text amendment was an update to the STR licensing requirements, which is this insurance requirement. But we also took the opportunity to do a couple other text amendment low-hanging fruit types of things that we had heard from the Planning Commission in the past. So first is the insurance requirement. So we are currently going through the relicensing process for all of the STRs in the city. We're also still working on enforcement for those that are still posting. So greater emphasis has been placed on that here recently, and our goal is to have the end of the renewal process almost coincide with enforcement action. And so once we actually get to kind of a summons stage of the enforcement action, we'll know whether or not there'll be additional licenses available. And if there are, then of course we can provide that information to the individuals that are out of compliance, and they would have a chance of a lottery if there is one. But that's all kind of aside. The main point of this is my understanding that a while ago when the commission first heard about or first discussed STRs, there was a question about insurance and whether or not that should be something within the ordinance. Not sure exactly what happened, but it was not in the final ordinance document. The city has since been working with Nick's office and Carmen, and they found some language that they thought was pretty good, that wasn't too burdensome for STRs. So basically what this would do is the STR owner would have to submit a notice to their insurance company stating that they run an STR. And they would have to give us a form affidavit indicating that that had been accomplished. And then it's up to the insurance company whether or not they would want to charge them a different rate or something else of that nature. And then there is a bare minimum of $1 million policy there as well. So that's the insurance item. As I mentioned, it's more of a notice, and then the burden's on the insurance company to decide if something needs to change. Then the second one is we've talked about expanding ADUs and availability or the ability to install an accessory dwelling unit in other locations within the city besides just the RE and R1. This is a topic we've discussed a few times. Looking at the zoning map, there are a number of R2 parcels and a few R3s that are a little larger in size than the ordinance might indicate. And so we did not want to preclude the potential for ADUs to be allowed in those areas. So we're proposing to add as permitted uses, the allowance of ADUs within the R2 and R3 as accessory uses. And then finally, this is something that's coming to you from the HPRC. So the HPRC wanted to formalize the length of time a certificate of appropriateness, which is what they issue for historic projects, the length of time that those are good for. Now, oftentimes they're only 6 months, so we want to standardize it and extend it also to a year because of the extended time frame that sometimes it takes to get contractors lined up and construction actually started. We've also seen a number of COAs that just come back to us because they weren't able to make the 6-month time frame and ask for renewals. And so this would at least give them a little more time. So those are the 3 text amendments that are covered by this ordinance. Be happy to take any questions.
I have a question. How many ADUs are in town? Do you know?
I don't have a firm number.
Yeah, approximate.
But there are a few
Okay.
there in town.
Oh.
Yeah.
My question is also about the ADUs. How many R2 and R3 properties are there that you could legitimately put an ADU on?
I guess I don't have a number off the top of my head.
More than 20, less than 20? Okay.
Yeah, there's
Oh, yeah.
probably in that ballpark because a lot of the parcels are too small, but some of them would be able to have a small structure in the backyard or something of that nature.
See, I wouldn't even think 20. I think that would be, because of the small parcels, yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple that are in sections that you might not think of as being R2, and they do have some size, but it's not a substantial amount. But we are trying to make strides towards allowing greater housing possibilities.
In town this small, you gotta, each one matters.
So I have a question on that though. Okay, so we allow it and they need more parking then too.
There is, I believe, an ADU requirement for
Parking,
parking.
okay,
Yeah, I believe that's the case. They would still have to meet setbacks.
yes,
I
I realize.
Now, as an accessory structure, setbacks are smaller than a principal structure.
Mhm.
So there would be a little bit more wiggle room in a rear yard scenario.
So I guess the question is, do we address the parking?
They would still have to meet all the same requirements for ADU and R1. Why not? Let's say they're good to go in R2. and
Well, it
3.
doesn't mean it's a short-term rental,
No, that's a separate issue.
right? That's what I mean, so. On residential, we don't have a requirement for parking for an accessory dwelling unit. So if you wanted to rent it out long-term, you could do that. But
Well,
if you were gonna
the
make
goal
it
is
an
to-
STR, then
The
the
goal-
parking plan would come in effect. Okay,
Yeah, the goal is to have these be long-term.
Right.
Rather than STRs because of our licensing program. I
Yeah.
do know for a fact that STRs are required to have an additional space.
Yeah.
I just can't recall, and I was trying to look that up to see.
well, now that we're just, I'm thinking it shouldn't matter as long as they're not using it as a short-term rental. Because on a rental, we don't, well,
Because you would still be
I know.
able to, let's see, wait a minute.
It's like
Dwelling accessory, one per ADU. There is one space requirement.
so there is, but, so the person that has street parking, it just takes up another street parking and you're gonna annoy your neighbors. But,
But it's
I
already
mean,
allowed in R1, which
but
is
that's-
the majority of zoning in the
Yeah.
town.
Yeah. If-
yeah, I'm just saying, I mean, you gotta look at not, you gotta look at the whole picture, and the whole picture is that
Right.
it could impact your neighbor's parking.
Yeah, according to the code, you would be required to place a space.
Right.
Or to construct a space for an ADU. So-
Constructively,
Construct
be on
a
your
parking
property.
stall. Yeah, on the property, off street.
but
parking
people
space.
on Minor Street don't, or Colorado Boulevard don't have parking spots.
I mean, I hear what you're saying.
They might not
and-
even have enough, big enough property. to build
Exactly.
An ADU, so.
But that sounds like a case by case issue for me,
Yeah.
not a reason to deny it to the entire zone.
Oh, I'm not talking about
Oh,
deny it, I'm
okay.
talking about questions to make sure we didn't miss something
Right.
in here,
Makes
which,
sense.
because that's the first thing that somebody's gonna come in and complain about is, wait a minute, they built a structure, they're renting it out.
Mhm.
And now they took my parking spot.
They still have to like get a permit to start to build an ADU, right? Isn't that accurate?
Absolutely.
So the permitting process, like that, hopefully that stuff would come up. I would think.
Yeah, no, there
I'm
are
saying-
some.
Well, he's
about
saying
it.
they have to have a parking
Yeah.
spot, so they're gonna have to build one. So the guy on Colorado Boulevard is not gonna be able to do this
Yeah.
unless they have behind their home parking.
Correct. I
Yeah.
mean, if you only right now, as your principal residence, only have street parking,
Yeah, you can't do it.
correct, you would not be able to do that
Yeah.
unless you were.
Just wanted to
come
make
in
sure
for
we
a
covered
variance or
that
something.
base.
Yeah.
So do we need to think about also if people live on Colorado or Minor, how do we make carve out an exception for them? And I don't know if we need to do this or not. It's like, if they have enough room for an ADU, why do they need to have something that allows for the parking to be the same for both the primary and the ADU?
Well, that's what my question is how do we, he's saying that, so the person on Colorado Boulevard that doesn't have off-street parking would not be able to build an ADU to rent it out because they won't be able to provide a parking spot.
Unless they were able to, unless somehow that particular house was able to find room on their lot or something.
If you heard what I just said, I said for the person that doesn't have a place to build parking, that person wouldn't be able to.
Well, it
do
seemed
it.
like if we had a place in his backyard for a building, maybe they could put a parking space in his front yard.
I mean, if that's what they want to do with their,
Boulevard?
Huh?
On Colorado Boulevard?
Some houses have a yard in front.
Yeah, and they have the sidewalk there and
Sure,
the
yeah.
ban and the railing.
I
And-
think that seems to be like a thought process that every individual will go
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
independently.
Yeah.
So as long as
As long as
We
we
know
got it
there's
covered,
parking.
yeah.
good, we can move
Yeah.
on.
But is this also one more question, then I'll let it go, I promise. Is this also something that if we started to see people on Colorado, for example, or Minor saying, I really want to do an ADU, I have room for it, can we work with this parking? Is that something that we can go back and address?
oh, of course. I think
They
I'm
can go
confused.
to the variance board
Okay.
to,
But if you as a commission, if we find that this is a challenge in the future, we go through the exact same process on a code amendment too.
Right.
That is true. I would, because parking is kind of a hot button topic, I guess my recommendation would be to leave the parking as is for now and see if it becomes
I would
an
agree with that.
impediment. And then maybe look at it at that point in time.
And at that point, you'll have people with ideas for how to get around it because they're wanting to do it. In theory, if
Yeah.
that's the issue that we're having.
For us ourselves, we might
Yeah,
wanna
exactly.
bring out something else to add or to remove or whatever. And we
and
can
the
always do that.
setbacks itself make it difficult as it is. I mean, it's, yeah, you gotta get through that part.
Yeah, there are, oh, as I mentioned, there's definitely smaller
Smaller
setbacks
setbacks,
because it's an accessory structure.
Yeah.
But they are still there, absolutely.
Did we put a, size limit on the structures?
I think there's a minimum size.
Okay.
Requirement.
I see minimum size.
Yeah, 2 people to live.
Yeah.
Yeah,
minimum
200.
size. I don't believe there's a maximum. I think that's more
Which-
dictated by the space. because-
Exactly,
Because you do have to have, the lot coverage comes into play as well with that.
which the setbacks would be. So the minimum, at least if we have a minimum.
What was the
It's
minimum
probably
size? I didn't hear. 200. 200 square feet?
That is small.
Oh, 10 by 20.
It is small.
It's a tiny house. you
Yeah, it
know?
is a
I
tiny
mean, that's
house.
the minimum too.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, and then another question, so accessory dwelling, since we're thinking of it as a rental, how are they doing? Well, I guess it's up to that person, the plumbing, everything like that, and then is it a separate meter or is it on theirs? I mean, it's all,
It-
so it's a
It's a.
tap fee, everything.
It is not an inexpensive process to build a true detached ADU.
Uh-huh.
Because if you do have a detached ADU, yes, you would have to have, new taps.
I'm thinking a
meters, et
detached
cetera.
one. Okay,
Yeah. So
okay, so
it-
they would have to go through all that too?
not
That's a
an
lot,
And
yeah.
it's basically a house,
Mhm.
you know, at the end of the day.
What's our tap fees at now?
Just shy of 20.
Yeah,
Okay.
about 7 for water inside city limits and about 13 for sewer inside city limits, outside is double.
Okay, no, I remember when we were at 5,000, so, yeah, wow, no, that's good, okay. Cool.
And I think the question was asked of maximum size of the ADU. It's whatever 50% of the primary structure is.
No more than 50%.
Yeah, no more than that.
Okay, so we kind of got off here, before discussion, any public comments? Do you have any?
I see no attendees to
Okay.
the meeting.
And then, the commission questions, so any other questions?
Ready, that's ready. Okay, so about the first one, the insurance company, the insurance requirements, I have a couple comments on that.
Okay.
The first one is, why are we not being more like straightforward? And, I mean, I am very ignorant in this, so just take it with a grain of salt, but, why are we not just requesting proof of short-term rental insurance? Instead of asking them to
Oh,
inform the
yeah.
insurance company and blah, blah, blah.
Most homeowners insurance companies will not insure an STR.
Might be a reason for that.
Correct. So
So
that is
they-
why, so that's why it's come to this, like, we'll ask your insurance provider, if they say, sorry, it's on you, that's, they tried. Correct?
Well, if they can't get insured for a business that they're running, why is that business allowed to run in town?
I think they
I-
would,
I don't know that that is true of every insurance company.
Right.
So you might just end up having to shop at a different location. You know, you
Okay.
might get dropped by an insurer, but have to shop around for a different one.
That would all be true if you just required insurance of them too, right? Or would
Yeah,
it not?
that's, we were trying to make it a little less burdensome and put the onus on the property owner and the insurance company. But the requiring it is, I believe, an option as well. This is this language is similar to some other language we found in Denver. So that's kind of what we modeled it after.
So just to follow the line of questioning here is like, so you were saying, so they have the option to ask?
No, they have to.
They have to
inform the
try.
insurance company.
Yeah,
Yes.
and if the insurance company says no, then they are not covered by insurance and then they can't have a permit.
But how do you know that?
Yeah, they would have to fill out the affidavit form, which is, not always full.
Is there a way to call and like, once they fill out the affidavit form, to just verify with the insurance company? Can the insurance company say yes or no? Like, I don't know, like
And
where.
that's what I was trying to go, it's like, so wouldn't just be easier to ask them for a proof of STR insurance? If they don't have it, then we don't have to call anybody. They obviously try to us, told the insurance if they have an STR, they need to be covered for that. And if they say, oh, no, sorry, we don't do that, then
We're
they
okay
won't
then with the
have that,
liability
right?
insurance. Cause
What?
it looks like, go ahead and try and see if your insurance will do it, and if not, you're still covered by liability.
Okay, one of the things is we're in a public hearing, so we gotta keep the.
I'm sorry, I
Uchi keep,
apologize.
yeah, no, it's fine, it's just trying to follow protocol, so have her ask questions towards the applicant and let him.
So I know.
And
how
then we'll go
conversation-
into
okay.
discussion.
Okay, yeah,
Exactly.
Okay, so I guess, so does the liability insurance as tied with this STR insurance? I know you guys mentioned that some, oh, that's the second one.
They're also able to reach out to, the short-term rental hosting agency.
Mhm.
Oftentimes Airbnb, et cetera, may offer insurance plans. So if you do get denied by your own insurance company, you can attempt, and I don't know what their qualifications are, I must admit, you can attempt to go through the hosting site.
So, can give you guys some insight on that because I was looking into that because we wanted to have short-term rent insurance when I had an Airbnb. We couldn't get anybody. Someone was telling me there's one out there, but I couldn't find it. And when we were looking into the Airbnb coverage, because we were like, oh, we got that, we're good. Not so fast. Actually, it is kind of like a half policy, and obviously, you will probably be the one that has to corroborate this. But it's like Airbnb, how is the thing? It's like a pool of how to play. It's not like you can apply and you get it. It's like if so many people applies, only so many can get. So like 70% of the people that applies for that can only get it. So if by June, they ran out of all of that money and you apply in August or whatever, then you're not gonna have access to that. Obviously, I'm very ignorant to that, but we have to read the little print. How you call it?
The fine
Fine
print, yeah.
Cause I don't think, this thing is actually gonna be, is similar to that. I don't think replaces it at all. Cause we looked into that and we're like, oh no, that's BS. It's not true. So I don't really feel comfortable saying if you can get one, then when you have the liability of the other one, because I don't think it's going to cover it at all. But, I obviously am not a lawyer, so you have to do more research on that. And the first part, I just feel like it's a little more like straightforward instead of asking them to inform and then sign this affidavit. Just ask, I think it will be easier to just ask for proof of short-term rental coverage. That's my suggestion on that.
Okay, so what you're saying is short-term rental is difficult to get. They can't get it. I remember when this was brought up with one of the commission members is how this all started. And it was because people would be underinsured. And then if you lived next to a short-term rental, say there was a fire and it damaged your home, is their insurance going to cover your home? So if
Not
they,
even,
well, I'm just thinking the train of thought. So what if you upped their homeowner's insurance instead of $1 million, maybe you go to 2 million? Would that make the neighbor comfortable knowing that their homeowners is insured?
so when I called my insurance company and asked them about that, they told me that, I asked them all the questions and they said that, if we had a short-term rental and we only had a homeowner's insurance and something happened in the short-term rental, they would not cover it at all. So even if they have, an amazing amount of coverage, if you're not covered for short-term rental, they're not gonna cover it.
So short-term rentals are all around, they're not insured, is what you're saying?
Unless that you have a specific short-term rental insurance, but just your home insurance doesn't cover short-term rental.
So what do other
Are there
What
other,
does holidays do? I mean, there's gotta be something that's out there. There must be a short-term rental insurance.
Like Crested View, you have the town show it during the.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I think the intent of this was, instead of making it mandatory to have that separate short-term rental policy, we were trying to make it so that maybe you didn't have to get another policy and you could go with whoever's insuring the property to begin with, right?
Correct, that was the intent. Now, we don't know how insurance companies would react to such a notification but from the city's perspective, it was kind of on those entities then to figure that out amongst themselves. That was the original intent, was that it was just, if it worked with your own insurance company, great. But I do see the point. Might be something we wanted to talk about a little bit more potentially.
it seems to me that running a short-term rental out of your house or property that you own is running a business out of your home, and homeowners insurance doesn't cover your business when you run it out of your home. Separate thing. I mean, no matter what the type of business is, are there other business types that the city requires to have some kind of insurance? Not short-term rentals, but just some other kind of business?
Oftentimes,
You mean when they?
do we do that with contracts?
Yeah, where the city requires it.
Proof of insurance.
Usually it's not required.
Yeah.
Just a guide
Yeah.
for a business.
With your license?
No, you don't have
I
to
mean,
show
flood the
proof.
line if you want. Sometimes other.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so
I actually have a question for them. So Jared, are you saying that as long as they show that they at least tried to get short-term rental, the city would be cool with liability insurance? Like just general liability insurance? I agree. I think that, because I know as a landlord, I have to have separate insurance for my rental property.
Mm.
And like it's all tied together, but I had to do something totally separate. Like I think they have to show proof of some kind of separate insurance that's going to cover that rental, because my homeowners would not have covered the rental at all.
Well, I would ask, are traditional rental situations required to prove that they have insurance to the city? Are hotels required to prove that they have insurance to the city?
So for instance, like a rental property,
Yeah.
I rent an apartment or something
get
of
your
that
own.
nature. We don't have a requirement that you carry renter's insurance.
Mhm.
Sometimes the leaseholder does, but
Right,
that's not a
that's
city
between-
requirement.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah. It sounds like we've got a number of questions, so, it's completely up to, planning commission, but, if you do want to, continue it to December, and we can look into some of these items.
can we
it's possible.
separate this one out so you can get your others done?
Unfortunately, our ordinance was
Oh.
for the three.
All
Now,
inclusive?
the other two, I will admit, are not exceedingly time sensitive.
Okay.
either. HPRC wants once it's on the burner, but I don't think it's a absolute 100% must be done right now. I think, we can still work within the bounds of the COA and the ADU. Not too often many people are in over the winter looking to build an ADU yet, so.
Okay, so the way I'm understanding it is we're concerned about the homeowner not having short-term rental insurance. They may be able to prove that they have homeowners insurance, but the normal practice with homeowner insurance companies is if they find out there's a fire on the person's property next door, there's damage, they're not going to cover it because you were doing a short-term rental and that's not covered under your policy.
Not just that, even damage
Right.
to your own house. You're running a business
Yeah,
out of your
but-
house without
yeah.
informing your insurance company.
So.
Yeah, they frown on that.
That's kind of where we're at with it. Okay, so do we all agree that we want to carry this on to the next meeting? We don't want to close the meeting, but carry it on to the next one.
I would prefer a continuance because then we don't have to do another public notice in the newspaper, et cetera.
Okay,
I do have one question. Well, how will this affect, because this is all part of the same ordinance, how will this affect your short-term, you said your short-term rental, you're trying to like do the renewal and the enforcement process? Like, how does this affect that?
Yeah, so
Because you're trying to make those balance out.
well, to be perfectly honest, when it got, bumped from the last one, we just decided to move forward with the standard renewal. So this wouldn't really take effect until the next round of renewal, which wouldn't go out until next October. And the renewal period, we send things out in October.
Yeah, October first.
And it's for December 31st deadline. So then everybody's renewed by Jan 1. So
So then it means you go to not being able to enforce any type of insurance thing, except for where we're at.
correct, we wouldn't have this go truly into effect until the next round, which wouldn't be till 2023.
And what is it that we have in effect right now for proof of insurance?
The ordinance is mute on the point at this point.
But isn't it, did I understand correctly earlier that it's mute on the point for basically every kind of business? Is there any type of business in town that the city requires to have some form of insurance?
The only ones are not like a land use item, so the only businesses that we really require insurance on are contractor licenses, which
Okay.
are a totally different classification of use.
Right, a contractor, but like a continuing business in one position, really not. So I guess my point is just that this would be the first time the city would require insurance of a specific business type. And that's kind of a big deal. I would do this for.
I see pawnbrokers.
Oh, okay, Lumber,
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
liquor
Okay.
licenses.
Do-
So
Are
there is-
required to have insurance for liquor license.
Well, they have to get a license.
Vendors.
Okay.
He's rattling. off.
Vendors,
The
Well,
city
they have
does not
license to
require
run
that
their
information.
That was gonna be my next
Encroachment,
comment
so
as well,
businesses
because I mean,
encroach on the street.
I
Let's
mean,
get
if we don't
insurance
ask,
coverage.
Okay.
River.
if we don't
operation.
demand insurance from
Oh.
other businesses, why do we do it for them?
Well, we
That's
do
the
have a
question.
few other examples.
Okay.
My, off the top of the head was, not sufficient, so thankfully Nick has done through our ordinance, we did find a few pawnbrokers, which we don't really have.
Okay.
River rafting companies.
Okay.
Anyone who does have, encroachment agreements onto a right of way. So a lot of the minor street items. So we do have a few examples.
Okay, so that makes sense. So it seems like there's a classification of certain types of business activities seemingly like they could have collateral damage like you were talking about.
I
That makes sense.
I
Thank
think
you.
another direction to take right now would be for us to approve this and knowing, so there is some type of requirement for insurance, because it
Mhm.
sounds like right now we don't have any requirement. So to protect your community from the short-term rental people that have it, if something was to happen, we could approve this, at least it gives the city something that they have to approve, and then revisit it with you guys researching more if short-term rental insurance is available for something where we can put more teeth into it at that point, if we needed to.
That is an option, absolutely.
Right.
We will bring forward more text amendments. That's the next one we're going to talk about. It's just not in a work session type of setting.
And I think given that we're in that licensing period and knowing that we would have to go till next October is not in the best interest of,
I also,
not having any insurance.
sorry, I should raise my hand. I also think though, this goes back to something that Kent said about, you're running a business out of your home. These are residential districts. And we're allowing a business proposition to go on in a residential district. I think there needs to be a little bit of extra protection for not only you, but your neighbors. If that makes sense.
That was gonna be my next question, like why, trying to be devil's advocate here, like why do we don't request insurance for long-term rentals, but we do for short-term rentals? But your point, kind of adds to that, because we are allowing them. to
Oh, I
do
think we should have it
business
for long-term rentals too, but that's just me.
there. Why not? I mean,
Okay,
it's to protect
so,
our community anyway, right? The neighbors, so.
okay, so do we want to, is somebody, well.
I don't think I'm done with questions though.
Okay, are you done?
No.
Oh, no, then go ahead. Yeah.
So on C, it says, The licensee shall maintain an insurance policy as described in this section. Failure to maintain an insurance policy as described in this section shall be cause for automatic suspension of the short-term rental license until the coverage is reinstated. Does that mean that you hold their spot on of the 15 until they have insurance back, or they just kind of have to go back on the waiting list, you know? Because it says, it's kind of,
You
it
know,
says
the-
reinstated.
I think you bring up a good point. It might be nice to have like a timeline, maybe 30 days.
Yes.
Something of that, and that helps staff as well, because it gives us a firm timeline, like we understand that you don't have insurance because it expires on the 15th. You need to provide it by the 15th of next month, otherwise the lottery process starts.
Yeah, and it can happen in good faith even, like your insurance can get dropped even when you're
Okay.
operating in good faith.
Absolutely. Good.
You have anything for how long?
If you do choose to move this along, we would just request that any motion have that, you know, have a amendment built into it.
Let me make sure I'm not missing anything else. You answer about this COA. I just had a small comment about just the wording on the first, but which we might be changing anyway, but might as well just throw it out there.
Oh, and you're
It
gonna,
says, yeah, section 1(8)(a), says a licensee shall inform his or her insurance company. And I thought that was kind of funny. We could just say there, right? I mean, 2022.
that's legalese that can probably be tweaked. If you have any thoughts on?
I mean, does it have to be gender oriented?
Yeah, my only thought would be, there could also apply to like a corporation or an entity rather than a person. But,
Which there are companies that run SDRs anyway.
yeah, if there's companies that are licensed here,
Well,
yeah.
well, they're,
Yeah,
you're not
they have
supposed
be
to be, but
primary
sometimes,
residents, Yeah.
yeah, but sometimes there
true.
are management companies that they hire to take care of.
Manage it, yeah.
But the
There's
owner
no
of the license.
corporation that's licensed. It's-
And I do
Person.
think that brings up a good point. I do know in speaking with Carmen, there has been a court case that's worked through Louisiana that has stated that you cannot have a license restricted by residents or not. Now, we don't know if that will trickle into other
Really?
court districts, but Carmen did make us aware of that. So we may lose the residency restriction. However, we do feel that we have a number of other restrictions that are strong and that are for the protection of the community. We don't know that for a fact yet, but
So
it
mad.
may be coming down the pipe.
Well, that would, I mean, that's off the public meeting, but I would think it would take a long time because, yeah, you've got towns all over the country doing, it. Okay.
This is a
Gotcha.
question based off of something that Uchi asked. So will they be required to have their insurance proof on file with the city? Like that stays on file with the city, so you know the dates? Going along with, you know, if they go out of compliance, they've got 30 days to cure and quit or whatever. So does that stay here with the city, with staff, so you all are aware of that, or?
So, under this, you wouldn't necessarily be required to give the proof of insurance. You'd be required to prove that you reached out to your insurance company, and that would be an annual renewal item. If the code was changed that we did have to show proof of insurance, of course, we would
That just makes
keep
it,
it on file.
that makes it difficult though with the way that is written. Like I agree that section C needs a little bit of clarification because that makes it seem like the city is keeping track of when the insurance is due or when the insurance might fall off. You know, so where does that liability and that responsibility lie? Does the licensee have to come to you and say, hey, the insurance company dropped me? Or do you say, hey, I noticed your renewal is coming, like, you know, there's a gray area there.
Yeah, and if you're dropped by your insurance company, it's tough for the city to know that in general. Because the insurance company doesn't have the burden to tell us. So that's why we've been working on the annual license renewal, because most of the time insurance is run for an annual basis.
That makes sense.
That was the rationale behind it.
And Jared, I think there could be a world where the proof of insurance is part of that application as well. Because in the code, it says, such other information determined necessary by the city clerk to be in compliance with the STR section
Okay.
can be on the application. So I don't think it would be totally out of the realm of possibility to just require an attachment of the proof of insurance under this 2133.
Yeah, even as written, right?
Yeah.
It seems to me like part A is saying that you have to inform your homeowner's insurance that you are operating a business. Part B says that you do have to have business insurance, because it says maintain liability insurance to cover the use of the short-term rental. Well, to cover your business activity, that's business insurance. It's gonna be separate from your homeowners, whether it's from the same people or not, that's gonna be separate insurance. And then C just seems to say that, yeah, if you get dropped, it's a problem. But B does seem to address that, like, yeah, you have to have insurance specifically covering short-term rental. At least that's my reading of it. Does that sound correct?
Unless you choose to do the case by case or whatever.
But that's still insurance that would cover your business. I mean, separately from your homeowner's insurance, at least from my reading of it.
Yeah, no, I do agree.
Yes.
Question is kind of out of protocol, how we do it. How did you insure yours? On your homeowners?
We ended up we dropped it when COVID happened, and then I don't have Airbnb anymore.
I know, but when you had the insurance for it, it wasn't a requirement for you.
No, we didn't have that requirement yet. I just had a
Right,
homeowner's
because I
insurance.
remember when it was.
But when we
okay.
started talking about that, I was like, yeah, I gotta get smart on this. And I couldn't
Okay,
find
so I
it.
guess we're back to, do we want to move forward with having them show proof of insurance or an affidavit of insurance, or, and that would be the two options, or do we want to continue this to December, knowing that
So
it wouldn't be enacted till next October?
yeah, if I may, I think the discussion has indicated that as an attachment to the affidavit would have to be then under B and under what the city clerks, or the
So
deputy city
both.
clerks, prerogative that the affidavit could be submitted with the
Yeah.
proof attached.
And just a point of clarification, the affidavit is informing your homeowner's insurance that you are operating a short-term rental. The proof of insurance is proof of insurance of the short-term rental, not of your homeowner's insurance.
No, the affidavit is to the city saying that you will have homeowners insurance.
You see, yes, that you have notified your homeowner's insurance company,
And anybody can show that.
and that's fine. But then separately from that, the business insurance is separate from that. There's two separate
The
things.
liability.
Yeah, excuse me. The liability insurance is separate from the affidavit that you informed your homeowner's insurance.
Okay, so
And I really feel like affidavit is not.
do we have any other questions? And we'll close, or
I have one.
I guess we need to decide if we're gonna close the hearing or continue. Go ahead.
So this is more for Nick. So with what is required by the city clerk, can the city clerk require both the affidavit that is in section A and proof of liability insurance that is in section B?
I would say
Like
yes.
the way that it's written now, would that be legit for them to put that on the application?
It's not in what's in front of us here. It's already in the STR code section.
Mhm.
But there's a code section talking about the license application. And then in that part, it says, whatever other information the city clerk deems necessary to ensure compliance. And under this new subsection B, something that would be needed to maintain compliance is that proof of insurance. So I think under the reading of that, of the code section that's already existing, I think it would be fine to have that in the affidavit. Or not in the affidavit, in the application.
If with that, and I would say, I would like to get this approved so that it can actually be in 2023 rental, like, process versus waiting till the end of 2023.
I agree.
Okay, so with that, I'm gonna close the public hearing at 6:46 PM. And too late, you can ask.
well, I don't love B though, because it's either. Okay, never mind. Never mind. B is is liability only.
Yeah.
They, okay,
Okay.
never mind.
With that, I'll ask for a motion, and whoever makes a motion, add to the 30 days on section C. You didn't give us a,
I did not, I apologize, I did not give you a sample motion on the.
Oh my God. I'm not doing it.
It can be simple, just like
yeah, it can be just on the
going to second
attached,
reading.
and with the, and then adding the 30
You
days.
could probably
Why don't we
go off
decide on
the
the-
time.
His, her, theirs. What do we decide on that though?
On the what?
His,
His,
her,
her.
theirs. Oh, for section A.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we can change it, but
I mean, I just think it's kind of
Okay.
silly to say his, her. Just, that's me.
Where-
What do you
Where
guys?
makes
where's
some-
your looking?
Or,
It's in the actual ordinance,
Oh,
language, not the
Staff
staff.
insurance. Makes sense to me. There's a lot of.
How, just say the appropriate insurance company?
Just-
Or they're
That
Their,
makes
government,
sense.
a person.
their,
Well,
Oh, but corporations
I
are
just-
people too.
my only pushback is that if it says there, then
Who's
it
there?
could be.
Yeah.
A non.
Yeah.
How about
resident
the
person.
licensees insurance, the
There you
licensee shall
go.
inform the licensee's insurance company.
perfect.
That's very
works.
specific.
that works.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Can I just say
whoever's
something?
adding, doing the motion, please add that to it. Okay, Lucy, it's your turn.
To do what? The motion?
Oh, no, Ken, go for it.
I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
sure, I move to approve, ordinance number 9 to amend the sections 2133, 2115, 21-104 with the, addition of changing 2133E8A to say a licensee shall inform the licensee's insurance company, so it is in her. Also, under 21-104I, to, oh, no, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, under 2133E8C, to say that a licensee will have 30 days to reinstate coverage.
Second,
I would second that.
okay, roll call.
Chair Cindy Olson,
Yes.
Don Reimer.
Yes.
Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
Chuck Howard, Kent Slaymaker,
Yes.
Ursula Kruslik.
Okay, with that, we'll go to new business. And we'll let Gary take over. Discussion related to parking requirements in downtown historic district.
All right, thank you very much. In front of you this evening is kind of a work session item, something we talked about back over the summer that I wanted to get back to, which was the idea that as of right now, in the historic district, there's not much in the means of opportunity to construct new parking spaces. And that comes into play when someone is looking at a change of use or adding, we talked about residential components. We do know that there are some places in downtown that have vacant second floor spaces that could potentially be utilized. However, the current parking ordinance restricts the use of those spaces and sometimes restricts the change of use. So I'm gonna give you an example. If you come in and want to go from an office use to a restaurant use, the parking requirement for an office use is much lower than a restaurant use. Right now, the code does allow for a little bit of flexibility there by allowing if you're changed from a office use to that restaurant use is within 125% of the parking requirement for the office use, then you can go ahead and make that change because you're within kind of that gap, that window. However, many locations would far exceed the 125%. And that was something that we had discussed also at the meeting in July, is maybe a change to the 125%. Well, staff has kind of looked at it and is proposing a fee in lieu process and not proposing that change to the 125% at this time. The fee in lieu that is being proposed is that if I still have that office space, I'm going to change it to a restaurant. Let's just say that the code requires you to have 2 additional parking spaces. So then you would have the opportunity to fulfill that requirement in a fee in lieu setting. So you pay a fee to be allowed to do your change of use. Back in July, the Planning Commission kind of expressed that they were interested in hearing out that idea, and also expressed a desire to have restaurants and commercial settings pay a higher fee than residential. At that meeting, it was contemplated that a true kind of rent restricted, rent capped space could potentially even have almost no fee in lieu. But at this point in time, the ordinance doesn't really have a definition for what a rent cap setting would be. However, we're also working on a housing plan and assessment with the county and the other municipalities within Clear Creek County. And what we're waiting, or what's supposed to come out of that plan, are some recommendations for code updates. So we're proposing to wait on including a true affordability standpoint in this code until we go through that process with the consultant that is yet to be selected, et cetera. So we're really at the very early phase of that, but still getting something potentially, depending on what the Planning Commission and City Council feel, but potentially getting something on the books that would allow for this fee in lieu to take place. Now, we know that not everybody would be, sometimes there's very small businesses that move into some of these spaces. And right now, and these are of course not set in stone, but these are proposed figures. Right now, we're proposing about $30,000 per parking space for commercial. And the rationale behind that is we looked at our estimates for building parking structure and divided that by the number of parking spaces, the gross number of parking spaces, and it was about $30,000. So we did try to link that figure into something tangible, something real. But we, as I was saying, we do know that not every small business in general, or landowner for that purpose, may be able to afford that right off the bat. So we haven't figured out all the nuts and bolts yet, but we're contemplating a payment plan. There are a number of different communities throughout Colorado that have similar ordinances. One of them is attached to this document, Golden, and they talk about payment plans of around 20 years. So, we would still, if directed or interested in proceeding and crafting an ordinance, we would come back with you with more solid ideas as to exactly how that would function. The other so we're proposing right now 3 different tiers. One would be a restaurant retail tier. The next one would be kind of an office space, personal service. Personal service would include, your hairdresser, your dentist, something of that nature as a lower amount. And then residential at the 5,000 figure. So quite a bit smaller because of the identified need for housing within the city. So that was the rationale there. Then we also wanted to indicate this would not be for the whole city. this would be something geared towards the downtown. Now, we would need to talk a little bit about the borders of this. Would it be simply the historic district? Or would it be something that the planning commission would be interested in going a little bit beyond the borders of the historic district? Right now, I've included a very quick map of the area that is proposed to include Carson Elementary as it may come up for redevelopment here in the future. And then the south side of Colorado Boulevard between 14th and a little past 17th, because there are some locations there that have parking limitations as well. And they are often kind of truly associated with downtown and what goes on in downtown, and they use the parking spaces that are public frequently. So with that, I'd ask if you have any questions, happy to hear thoughts, etc. If this is something you're interested in pursuing, happy to bring back an ordinance for your consideration, but want to have this more in-depth discussion.
Question or a couple, if the borders go beyond the historical district, how is it defined? Is it a special district? Is it just written these streets, or how does that get done?
Yep, it would be defined in the ordinance.
Mhm.
So of the defining the project area
Mhm.
that the fee and lieu would be able to be assessed.
So it would just say within these streets or something like that.
Yep, exactly. For instance, I included Eagle, the city of Eagle had
Oh, right.
had a map exhibit in there. It'd be something similar to that.
That makes sense. And I don't know if it makes much of a difference. I think it's worth noting that this will come up most for things with a small number of parking spaces because of just how the percentages work. You know, if you have one, then needing one more, it's 200%. If you have 10, needing two more, it's only 20. But personally, I would think that in order to move forward with it, we would want to keep the rent cap. There's a lot of people who live downtown that want to live downtown. If the building owner has to pay a fee to activate their rental place, they're just going to pass it on to their renters. They're not going to pay it themselves, especially if it's paid out over time. It'll just be part of the monthly thing, probably times 1.5 on the renters.
Well, this is if
So-
they change their use. This isn't for existing.
Right, but if they've been out of use for a while, this also triggers. Is that correct?
So let's just say you have vacant upstairs space in a building. There's, a number downtown, I'm sure you probably all think of some.
Mhm.
But if the building owner came in and said, hey, I've got this vacant space, I want to change it into residential. And so that's when it would be triggered, or the change of use scenario where the office turns into a restaurant. That's when it would be triggered. It wouldn't be for existing businesses, residential, et cetera. It'd just be, when that construction occurs.
And the biggest impact would be if there's one of the shop owners and they want to change it to a restaurant where all of a sudden they have to have more parking, so they're going to take it away from the other businesses. So then if they're at least paying this money for it, it makes it more fair.
But again,
When
it's
it
something.
works the opposite
yeah.
way, it's not so big of a deal. It's more if they change into that big commercial
Okay.
development.
So I've got a question on that then, on the office to restaurant example, say that a restaurant goes in and they're renting from a building owner. Is it the restaurant that owes the fee or the building owner? that owes the fee?
That's a good question. It's something we haven't hammered out. Typically, it's the building owner though, especially if you did want to go into that.
So again, they'll just pass it on to rent to the restaurant.
Yeah, but the restaurant's making all the money, I
That's
mean,
possible.
this isn't an uncommon, I remember this 20 years ago. It was $30,000 for a parking spot, in Denver and stuff, but
Yeah,
so.
we did find some examples. For instance, the Eagle example, was it 23 1,100. This is also a brand new ordinance. It was just passed earlier in 2020.
This ordinance here.
22, I was thinking 22, yeah. So I'm not 100%, I don't recall if they state what their rationale was or not. I think they also do a little more flat surface parking. I don't recall if it actually says what they tie their figure to or not. But we're certainly trying to tie it to something tangible.
Mhm.
The funds also, we would work with the city attorney to draft the language, but the funds are meant to go towards parking improvements.
Right.
And, let's just say that that the mobility hub and the parking garage get constructed. The fees would still go to, pay down any debt on it and or operation and management and maintenance of it. So.
Would we put that in the ordinance that that's where the monies go to?
Yeah, I think we would put a clarification in there. I
Yeah.
would want to double check with city attorney, but that's definitely the intent
I
of
would
it.
want to see that.
Yeah, I would think so. So you were talking about this other thing that's gonna come up with the county working in conjunction with stuff like that.
Mhm.
How does that affect this? I mean, that's probably a 2-year out.
So the only reason I bring that up is because right now, there's a housing authority at the county level, but it's proposed to this study. One of the things that they're going to study is creating a multi-jurisdictional housing authority. And if we have a multi-jurisdictional housing authority, the city of Idaho Springs could be one of those jurisdictions. And then we could do a few additional items. And one of them would be to better define what affordable housing is.
Is that gonna be contingent on if this lodging tax change passes or not?
I'm not certain about that. I know that we're going to go through this study regardless. I think it's more contingent on whether or not we actually build a multi-jurisdictional housing authority.
Which might depend on that. Okay, that makes sense.
I don't think so. I don't think it's different.
Yeah, they might come up with funds somewhere else if it doesn't.
I think that's
Yeah, we
where
got a
it's
grant
at right now.
I would,
for the study.
yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, we're certainly going with or without, any
Right.
legislative or what,
Participation in it and stuff.
we're
Okay.
still moving forward with this study.
Okay, so you're looking for a direction on if we want to move forward this. This was something we had discussed earlier. It lets it a little bit easier for a business to have a change in use or be able to develop and use the apartments upstairs because it's a way to
Alleviate.
address the parking situation instead of being so strict on the parking restrictions. Right.
Yeah, and we're not proposing that nobody receives a space or anything like that.
Right.
You're not purchasing a space. You're paying the fee into the overall parking development fund or whatever we're going to call
Because you can't meet the code of the parking restrictions,
precisely.
Yes.
This still
Yeah.
gives you an avenue to address.
which otherwise they don't have an avenue right now.
A variance is the only other avenue and not always the best. We've tried to kind of
Yeah.
limit the number of variance potentials we have.
We certainly have a parking issue in town. We also have a cost of living issue that's getting worse. And I would really worry that adding these fees that will get passed on to renters, whether residential or business, may contribute to that, may have a bad side effect of that. So I'd be down for moving forward with this, perhaps even raising the fees, because as you said, they've been the same for a while. They're similar to other areas. If we waive or reduce them for if they agree to a rent cap.
But that's selective. We don't know what a rent cap number.
We would have to
could be.
define that, obviously, just like all the other numbers in here, we'd have to define it, have to come from somewhere.
Yeah,
There's different ways to do it.
I would think you'd have to do a study to do it because we are not knowledgeable enough, I mean, for anybody. to
Which is
come up
hopefully
with it.
something that'll
Out
kind
of
of come
that,
out of that.
that group. that
Yeah,
they're-
that,
okay.
and I
Yeah,
do
that
feel
makes
like I'm
sense.
coming in with a touch less knowledge than I would like to. But I also didn't necessarily want to hold up the process. Now, I also will state that, you know, the 15 and the 5, you know, $15,000 for the others and the $5,000 are something that, and even the 30 are something that we can all discuss. Those are proposed figures.
Well, first of all, they're not that much, especially if paid out over 20 years,
Yeah.
especially if it's a business or a building owner in charge of it, and especially if they're just gonna pass it on in rent. I think that they could be higher if you included an option to waive or reduce them if you do a rent cap, whether for business or residential, because that affects, you know, small businesses and the mom and pops here in town too. Their rent for their business, and that would, a lot of places won't do that because they'll end up doing the math and saying, well, over 20 years, I'll make more money paying this than having a rent cap. So a lot of people still won't do that. The fee will mean more money for the parking garage, and it will give them an out, a way to not pay it and encourage affordable housing. I mean, I don't know if we should have more of this or not, but just at a time where affordable housing is one of our huge issues, at least equal to parking, I'd say higher than parking, or parking is a subset of it. It seems tough to put an extra fee that will just
Yeah, I
get passed
agree.
right on to renters.
You know, the electric rates are gonna go up, we got that in the mail, the gas rates are gonna go up, got that in the mail. The sales tax will probably pass, so instead of Idaho Springs having a 10%, sales tax is gonna have 11%. And public opinion is gonna go down when this gets out. So I think this is not a good idea, and it's not gonna alleviate the parking now, which is what we're looking for.
It will not alleviate the current parking challenges.
No,
You
It
know,
will help
it may
the
assist in the long run. You know, because we are still in the process of working with CDOT and drafting plans for the mobility hub that has a parking addition from
It doesn't seem to me like this project is aimed at helping with parking. And that's okay, not every single project needs to help every single issue. It seems to be more aimed at activating unused
Housing.
real estate, housing and offices and stuff.
You are correct. And that's kind of the give and take that we're asking the planning commission to consider, is that in addressing one item, you know, the potential for housing, there is a potential that the parking challenges either remain or increase until, you know, as I mentioned, I'm not gonna say it's a definite, but we've been working on the mobility hub for a long time, and we're certainly optimistic of its construction. We just don't know also what the timeline is for that. So there would be a gap in time.
Now, to move forward on something like this, we would have to do a public hearing.
Yes,
So
A true text
people
amendment.
would have the option to give input on it.
So I would like to express my opinion on this. I think it's a good strategy to try to activate potential housing in this historic area. I do feel like it would be beneficial if we could come up with a formula where we could allow for a lower charge, or maybe even taking it out if it's truly affordable. Now, what truly affordable, I think that's something that the city staff, I don't know, will have to maybe come up with our own definition, what is affordable for our community in Idaho Springs.
You meant the fee structure.
Yeah, because I do think that affordable housing should get a help.
And then we would have to track that as well, long-term. Because, you know, you can sign an affordable lease one year and maybe not the
Yeah.
next. So is something that there's a
Yeah,
little
that
more
they
to
sign
it.
for like, however years you're not gonna charge more than this or whatever it is that you guys said is a good formula.
Yeah, that's something we can,
I think that if the city is going to end up in a jurisdictional housing authority, I think they're gonna have to track that more. Like, to me, that would be
It's not the
negligent,
city, yeah.
if we aren't tracking that. But I would, I like you. Are you done? I didn't want to.
Yeah, no, I think so.
I think when we do this, if we do this kind of ordinance, C, the payment, and E, the use of funds, both are things that should be in ours as well, because it makes it very clear when the fee and lieu shall be due and payable, like when, a new permit or a special use permit is required or requested, that's when it comes into play. And also, it's very clear about where the use of funds are, that's in section E. This is in the town of Eagle.
oh, okay,
I'm just
okay.
looking at yours. Yeah, no, I'm
Make
looking
sure
at
I'm
it
on the
too.
same
But
page.
no, I
Okay.
really like this, how they've been very clear where this is, like, what
Yeah.
triggers it and where the money is going. Like, there's no gray areas. I also think, I like the idea that if there are people that are being held back because they can't meet the parking restrictions, if we say, write a check and we can make this happen, I think that removes a barrier. I don't think we should totally get rid of it, because then all of a sudden we'll have all these second story,
Oh, yeah.
oh, this is all residential, like, will it all be residential? I don't know. So I think it should be some fee, because that's the skin in the game. But I like the idea, if you do affordable, whatever that means, we drop some of that fee, we'll drop a percentage. Maybe we don't raise your, because like Eagle talks about how they raise it on January 1, and we don't raise it for 3 years if you keep, like, I think there's room for that, but I like this. If it can help us get those downtown apartments, if parking is that what you're hearing? Is that parking holds people back from converting?
I have heard from a few building owners that are interested in constructing out some of their space. And that's one of the things I have to tell them right now is, that's great, but here's the parking counts that go into that. And, you have the variance avenue if you want. But I haven't had anybody take me up on that yet. The variance route.
Are those new parking spaces, Cindy said something earlier about they upgrade the number of parking spaces, but that takes them from elsewhere. Are those new parking spaces, assuming they're able to do it and everything moves forward, and they don't get a variance, those expected to be constructed, or are those taken from the learning pool, or it's
Under the current code, it's on site.
meant to be constructed?
Yeah.
That's part of it. Okay, that makes sense. I was just curious. Thank you.
I have like a clarification question. So we're talking about the affordable housing stuff. And, there's not really anything in the code designating affordable housing. And I know from other clients of ours who've looked into it. And, you have to kind of go off of what they call the AMI. And so you would sort of have to, I'm just thinking like implementing this as in the ordinance, like would it be, it might get complicated to be like, well, if you have this residential use and we're gonna charge you this $5,000 fee and you can't pass the charge on to your tenant if their AMI is at a certain percentage, like, I feel like that might get a little sort of messy to.
Oh, for clarification, that's not really what I was suggesting. It was more of that we would have to somewhere else where define what affordable housing is for our community, some metric, and it's complicated, there's math, there's means versus medians and stuff. And then this wouldn't be saying that like, you can't pass on the fee structure. It'd be more like, you can only charge some percentage of AMI.
I think what's being proposed is, it's not so much that the passing on, that's the concern, not what's being proposed, is that if, you are able to create your affordable housing lease or whatever it is at whatever AMI that we state as affordable, that then your one-time fee could be reduced.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so.
But we're not gonna be able to come up with that number because it's gonna take the experts in this group to do this study to come up with that number. So-
We'll have, and it won't be a number, it'll be a formula, because the number will change over time. Doing it as a number would be a very bad idea.
But that's a couple years out before you're gonna see that.
Well,
come out of
and-
that group.
I mean,
And that's why we proposed a lower amount now. And it's something, of course, that could be negotiated. The idea was to still have an amount there for residential, but yet not feel that we were, charging exorbitant amount to
Right.
still
And it could
allow
change.
people to make those changes.
Yeah.
I think because I didn't want to get ahead of the study, et cetera, and we recommended text amendments from whoever the consultant is, that's why I structure it that way, because I do remember that conversation from July, and I wasn't trying to ignore it.
right.
Was trying to kind of walk that type of.
I have a question for Nick, actually.
Yes.
About the affordable housing situation. We've had presentations and conversations before about affordable housing and, some people post affordable housing one thing, some people post another thing. Is it possible for us as the city of Idaho Springs to come up with our own definition of what affordable housing for our communities?
I don't know that
Okay,
off
we're
the top of my
kind of
head.
off
I
record
know
here.
that everywhere that I've looked at goes off of what HUD says, how they sort of formulate it, and it's just passed back into the ordinances at a municipal level. But I think Jared would maybe know better than me because he's been in on the developing the
Yeah.
study.
Okay, you guys, let's get back to where.
Can-
agenda
I would like to
item
say
we're
that this
discussing
is
here.
very much related. This is very much related to what
We're
we're
kind of
talking
getting
about.
off on,
We're talking about housing.
we're talking about the downtown parking.
We're talking about activating
Do
housing
we
units.
want to
I would like to get my answer.
forward this to another meeting for more discussion or a work session?
Are you saying that we're not able to continue discussing?
Yeah,
this?
no, we can, but I'm just saying, so we know what direction we're kind of going.
Well, I
do we
certainly have no
want-
questions.
Yeah, that's
For
what I mean.
tonight.
Do we want to
She
move
seems to.
this towards a work session? Because I don't think we're gonna come to a consensus on it.
I'm open to that. I would like to finish hearing
Okay,
what they have
go.
to say and
Yeah.
maybe we'll make a decision from there.
Yeah, from my understanding, we also do have a touch of a limitation also because we're not a home rule municipality, we're a statutory city. And so that's another reason why the multi-jurisdictional housing authority will give us a bit more power. That's my understanding of it. Now, I must confess, I haven't dove into all the home rule changes, but that's one of the reasons why we're pursuing that avenue. But yeah, if there are any more questions.
I just want to clarify, the reason why I'm asking these questions is because, I, every time I've, read about EMI and all that, and maybe I'm wrong on this one, but I feel like we always are being, like, what is the average, right, for, the county? I don't know if it's counted by the city only as well, but in the counties, it's off completely, because we have the average from Evergreen in the west of the county. So that's kind of why I'm like, is it possible to make this a little more specific to us, our community, instead of a big average thing that is not really very descriptive of our actual community?
I believe there's more finite data in census tracts that wouldn't necessarily take into account the entire county.
Okay.
What's that called?
Census tracts, that's kind of your smaller level than just full-blown county. So I believe that information is something that we can access.
Yeah, I would like to focus this more on the city. And didn't 4 Points do something where they looked at affordability, because that might be something?
They did look at affordability. They are a market rate. They do have where they want to be in that market rate. They expressed a desire to be within the 80 to 120 AMI.
Okay,
Now, they also do have several 4-bedroom units that were kind of slated for teachers that they're hoping to be below that. So be a little bit of a affordability, but not something that the city has defined affordability.
but it was based on AMI. I couldn't remember.
That's what they're shooting for. They're hoping to stay within that realm.
And in what we passed, they have to give so much of it to school district employees.
I think that was part of the school's contract for sale with them as well. Yeah.
Okay, so do we want to go to a work session, let these guys come back with more information, maybe looking at, well, you did get examples with the rates.
I do have more of those I can bring forward in the future too.
Where we have a better judging of if it's not high enough or too high.
I think that's a good idea to continue discussing in a work session. I do just want to throw out there that, you know, we're talking about the goal of this is to activate unused spaces or allow people to change of use. And part of that is housing, but this even applies on business rental as well. That, you know, there's an affordability crisis certainly here and throughout the nation. Anytime we're talking about housing, I would say it is very relevant to talk about the affordability of that housing.
Well, we got to realize too, some of this could be as simple as well, it's not simple, but they want to change to a restaurant.
Mhm.
Are we at this point impeding on some businesses that have approached you that aren't able to act on this because of the parking restrictions?
Yeah, I've spoken with a few locations that are looking to change uses. The one in particular that comes to the top of my mind, he actually, that landlord does have a little space that he can carve out to put a parking space, which is somewhat rare. So in his case, that works out. But that definitely wouldn't work out necessarily for other users.
So it doesn't slow that one down. It's more that business that wants to expand their business and doesn't have the parking. So it's not just about the
Yeah,
housing, it's
of
about the
course,
business too.
I have actually another example. I have one building owner that has submitted just a preliminary question about adding some square footage onto the rear of their structure. Now that would have to go through HPRC as well. But one of the things I flagged is that, you know, you're adding square footage and you would have additional parking spaces.
So I guess the other option is at the next meeting, bring it back in form of ordinance
And
with what we've discussed.
that's completely up to the commission. If they feel we're ready to move towards an ordinance, we're happy to draft one. Otherwise, if you feel that a work session would be more appropriate, we can work towards that either one.
Would city staff feel like they're up for defining affordable housing, like without any further discussion? I would think we probably need to talk about it more,
Yeah.
but I also
Yeah.
very much agree that this is important and we should move forward on.
I don't know that we would be 100% ready, but I will speak with Nick and Carmen in regards to, you know, what home rule challenges we may have
Right.
too. So we could do that and then come back at a work session with more information there.
And maybe we don't have to completely define the entire giant behemoth of affordable housing. Maybe there's some way to do it, you know, without biting off that enormous thing that you were complication you were talking about.
And my other concern is just that with this multi-jurisdictional authority that's coming through, it almost seems like it's more their place to sort of define that first, and then we take from that
That
as
was
it comes.
that was kind of the intent of working through the.
What's the timeline on that?
It'd be a good year or more. That was, yeah,
So
They haven't even formed it yet.
yeah, so we received about
Eugene probably
$225,000
knows more about it. We do?
grant.
So you can pay for it now, which is good.
Yeah, we have a great grant. We actually have the request for proposals out to consultants now. So we're looking to hopefully by after the first of the year, actually get somebody on board to do the selection process.
I would actually like to see another work session, and I don't know that we could necessarily define affordability even with an AMI.
Right.
But even if we started this process for allowing not only residential, development, but maybe some business expansion
Mhm,
that the parking is holding up,
mhm.
I would be okay working towards that. I don't know that I'm ready to see an ordinance yet.
Okay, no, we can go to a work session, what, December 7th? Were you planning on meeting that?
I was kind of thinking that, that we would meet on the 7th, if people are amenable. I do not have, we didn't continue. You moved that one on. So that is kind of up to planning commission. If you'd like to meet on the 7th and bring this in, we could certainly do that. Otherwise, we can look at a future meeting to bring it back
If you
on.
have any business stuff, do that, and then we can go into the work session, so if anything comes up, but otherwise just plan a work session. Does that
Is that
sound-
for December?
December 7th?
Yes,
Can we do it virtually and physical?
What?
I won't be around.
Well, work session would be, and that's up to, the chair and the commission, work session would be easier to have virtual. I mean, we always run a virtual meeting anyway, so it's
You're
kind
right.
of
I
up to
can
the
just jump into
commission.
some- Or I can maybe try to send you my comments ahead of time or something too.
No, that's fine, if you want to go virtual.
Yeah, and sorry, one last question, because I'm curious if this schedule at all helps finance the parking structure in any way.
So this fee in lieu process is not like a crux of our financing at all. But it could potentially help, pay down a bond or something that we would have out on, financing the parking structure. It would be a part of that repayment package.
So it's not contingent on them getting the money.
This is not, we're not leaning on this to.
Well, I was thinking that maybe
raise
it could be like, it could help the city prove of income in some way. It's like, oh, we will have this money coming in, that way you can give us money, kind of, I was wondering if that was a thing or not.
That is not, I think also it's so, for instance, right now we're looking for financing based on parking fees, right? That's something we can project with, now that we've got about 4 years data with some certainty, we would not be able to project this
Okay.
worth a darn.
That's what I
So
thought, yeah.
it's too infrequent, it's too one-off. So no, this is definitely not something that we're leaning on.
Okay, so, do you want to go over the staff report quick? Do you guys like when he goes over it quick?
I do.
We love.
We
One
love
of
it.
the things.
Okay.
Question on one or two, but
No,
not
I like
too
that.
quick. Yeah,
Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Oh, just, we to go over the staff report quickly. We are working with 4 Points Yet on the redevelopment of Block 57 and Gold Digger Field. They I forgot that I put the school maintenance. I apologize on that. They are in the process of finalizing their plan sets yet, so we do anticipate working with them on building plan review here over the winter, and hopefully a spring construction schedule. The school bus maintenance facility was intended to come before you last month. That is kind of put on hold for a little bit. So when the FDP does come back, you'll be the first to know. So we'll get that back on agenda when the school district is ready for that one. Habitat for Humanity. We had the groundbreaking. They had a couple minor things to touch up on their plan sets, but they're pretty darn close to ready. No, am I wrong on that? Oh, there are a couple. I thought we were about ready to issue an earth disturbance.
Oh, this is not earth disturbance, this is building permit.
Okay.
So that's I haven't seen earth disturbance application come through.
No, I have not, but I spoke with them about it.
Oh,
I provided them the application. Okay.
What is the particular hold and delay on that? Just out of curiosity.
what are they looking
The
for?
status, you know?
Structural something. It's the safe build right now for the building permits to actually get ready to build.
Okay,
And they've been on hold multiple times and tends to go back to the structural. And I think there was a frost depth issue.
but it's a technical permit issues like that, nothing with the city council
No,
Or-
yeah,
No,
no, just with the building
I
department
was
right
just,
now.
you know, I've had people approach me as somebody on the planning commission, so I wanted to ask,
Mhm.
so I could tell them.
Yeah, they have their entitlements, so their approvals from city council. So yeah, it's just finalizing building permit plans
It's great.
that, yeah, okay. I apologize. I thought they were like this far out. So,
Would
okay.
you characterize the technical permit issues they're dealing with as pretty normal?
Yeah,
or-
usual and customary.
Okay, right on, right on. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You may see a FDP submittal in the future, for 1501 Colorado Boulevard. I'm not gonna get into the details of it because it is pre-application, but it is for the location where, the duplex that was hit by a car last winter. So. Other activities, conditional, use permit for Mile High Rafting. We were going to have that on this evening, but, I spoke with the gentleman about it. He had some technical issues, so we're hoping to put that on the December meeting, as well. So we'd have 2 items on the December meeting.
That's for us.
Yeah, so
Them?
a part of the Mile High Rafting conditional use was that they come back in on an annual basis for kind of an update and to the planning commission, so. Yeah,
And do we just to hear what they had to say and that's it, or do we kind of renew their thing, or do we say, sorry, thank you, no thank you? Or-
well, if I'm not mistaken, I'll have to double check the ordinance. I believe that the planning commission has the ability to recommend to city council whether or not they think that the conditional use is being conducted in the spirit that was issued. And if they, do not feel such, make a recommendation to that end that the city council could take up.
And this is, if I recall correctly, city council voted that they got that SUP only by like getting that yearly oversight.
Yeah, that was actually not something that was in the planning commission's review. That was something that was added at city council level. So,
Will staff have a report based on what they have seen as following the, okay, thank you.
And then can we have also what the council had allowed?
I'll get you a copy of that
Yeah.
ordinance. Yeah, absolutely.
Because there was a few things that were different than what we had recommended. Yeah.
If there were a couple added tweaked conditions there, so yeah. I apologize, writing notes. Mobility Hub, we will be talking a little bit more about the Mobility Hub at Monday's City Council work session. But a couple of the things to note, the Jacobs House, you might have noticed behind Tom Knockers, the rigging has started to take place where they're kind of digging out and getting ready to lift and move that building. That building is scheduled to be moved in early December.
Was this the one that was scheduled for August initially?
Indeed.
Okay.
And then July, August.
Then all your customary.
Yeah.
So another thing that I just wanted to bring up, because it has also gone to city council in a work session, is the Roberts Brothers Garage. So right next to Jacob's house, that is also in kind of footprint of the proposed parking structure. So the city council has talked about moving the front half of that building to another location. So we're still doing all the planning, et cetera, for that, but it would come back to you as a subdivision plan of some form. So I did want to make the planning commission aware that that might be coming your way.
Which one would be the front of that?
Yeah, the older section is the east side.
Okay.
I mean,
The
they're both
garage,
old.
the
With
actual
the
garage,
door.
the door.
Yeah, they're both old, but the one is older. So,
Where did they get, well, we'll talk about it.
okay, no worries. HPRC has been active with 2 COAs, 1601 Colorado Boulevard, signage and fence, and then subsequently with an item about their siding, and then 1434 minor pertaining to a sign. We've also worked on the library site and revising some plans for libraries. And then various inquiry. So with that, I'd ask if you have any questions.
No, very good.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we'll adjourn the meeting for November 2nd, 2022 until December 7th, 2022. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Wonders all smiles.